Okay, welcome to session one, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Today we are kicking off with your North Star. So all this program is about is helping you to better able to support your child, your children through their mindset and emotions with their sport. So throughout this course, we're going to be talking about concepts. I'm going to be giving you some tools. I'm going to be sharing some of my own experiences. We're going to be going back and forth here, and this is really a collaborative experience and really helping you uncover some more ways that you can better support your child through their sport. So first of all, I'd love to hear from you. What brought you here today? If you're live, please write it in the chat box. Just write it in. Why are you here? And if you're watching the replay, just grab your pencil, pen and paper, write it in your notebook. Why are you here? Because it's really important to understand why you're doing something, understand the why behind whatever it is that you're doing. And with that why, um, that brings motivation, it brings consistency. If you have a big enough why, it'll overcome anyhow, is a saying of a mentor of mine. So pop it in the chat box. Why are you here? Why are you in this course? Why are you here today? Why did you sign up for this program? What brought you here? If you're live, type it in the chat. If you're watching the replay, just write it down on a pen and paper. Okay, so Rachel says to support my kids through their fears and anxieties with achieving their goals before both sporting and academic. Just so you know, those live and they will be on live later on. If you have any questions, just pop it in the chat. We'll also have time at the end to ask any sort of individual questions specific to your situation. Just give it another minute for you to write down either in the chat or in your book what brought you here. My next question, I'll give you some time. You can finish up that for those that are ready. My next question is, what is currently going on for you, with you, in your experience with your children? It's really important before any change happens in life that we acknowledge the current situation. We tell ourselves the truth about what's going on. And the more honest we are with ourselves, the more that makes way for change. So the second question is, what is the current situation that you're experiencing with your child or with your children around this sport, or insert whatever it is? So it might be, look, at the moment, every time I try to get him to try a new thing or her a new thing, they won't do it because they're scared. And I'm trying to encourage them, but I don't want to be pushy. But at the moment, we're battling quite a bit because I'm trying to invite them to do things and they won't do it. For example, it might be, at the moment, you know what? Me and my son are just clashing a lot. We're just having a lot of battles, and I don't know what to do. Could be a situation. So the second question is whether you like, if you're live, put in the chat. If you want to keep it private, just write in your book what is going on currently with your these situations with your child or children. Really want to be honest with ourselves. because, as I said, that honesty gets it off our chest and also allows change to happen. What is the current situation? Be honest, be real, be vulnerable, be maybe go a layer deeper than maybe you've told yourself at the moment. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you hate the situation and you just tell yourself, like, I really don't like what's going on. It's really pissing me off. I'm really frustrated. Maybe it's not that bad, but maybe you just tell yourself the situation. Rachel says resistance to making changes, clashing arguments around reality versus imagined fears, kids not opening to your suggestions, ideas. Yep, exactly. Okay, so my next question for you is how do you want this situation to be ideally? Oftentimes, when there's a situation that's happening, and to be transparent and honest, oftentimes we tolerate experiences for a long time. Something that we don't like, we tolerate it because we don't know another way, or as humans, we can kind of tolerate things just being not very good until it gets to a point that we really don't like them. If we're sitting next to a fire, it'll be okay. We can tolerate it for a while until we get too close or gets too hot, and then we move away. Right. And so this situation, it may have been going on for days, weeks, months. It may be going on for years. And now we're kind of really coming to grips with, maybe you're coming to grips more with, oh yeah, this situation's happening. And so my question is, how would you like it to be instead? Oftentimes we get so wrapped up in the current situation and we kind of feel like it's never going to end, or we're so inside it that we can't necessarily see how it could be different. I had another mentor of mine says, when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. So now I want you to take a step back and step out. And what is your ideal situation in these situations? So, for example, if there is clashing, what do you want instead? If your child isn't really listening to you, it might sound obvious, but what do you want instead of that? What's the opposite of the current situation, maybe? Or what do you want ideally in these situations? It might be, I would like him to be more open to hear my feedback, to suggestions. For example, I might want him to at least listen to me and try some new things. Or I might want to, instead of us fighting, we actually really listen to each other and we come to an understanding and we both feel heard, whatever it may be. We just looked at the current situation. This is the ideal situation. You're doing great, by the way, guys. Even these oftentimes simple questions or thought processes just get overlooked. But before we even get into the work that we're going to do for this program, it's just important that we all be honest with what's going on and what we want. Okay, third question. Well, Rachel says, my child to have more confidence and belief in themselves and their abilities, be more respectful, have engaging conversations. Great. Now, this is an interesting question. Maybe you haven't necessarily thought about it too much. Maybe you have. Why is this currently not happening? To the best of your knowledge, why is this things that you want currently not happening? It may be something that you feel like you're doing or that they're doing or not doing. But why, to your knowledge, is this situation that you want to happen not happening? Or why is the other situation happening? What do we think? In the chat box, if you're live, or on a piece of paper. What's currently getting in the way of what you want? telling yourself the truth here, guys. Sometimes it could be uncomfortable to acknowledge. Sometimes after we feel better, that we sort of free stuff up, or we just have these conversations and we can feel lighter. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable. All of that's welcome. It's all part of the process. What's currently getting in the way of what you want? If you don't know, you can also write down, I'm not really sure. You can have a guess. There's no right or wrong answer. Rachel says stubbornness, fear, lack of time, and presence. Cool. Heidi says our energy has been off. She continues, we have a change of circumstance and his resistance is next level. Rachel, I'll just clarify from you, and just as my understanding, but maybe also your understanding. When you say stubbornness, could you let me know, is that your children or yourself or both? Same with fear. I would just invite you to look at being a bit more specific with what that fear is around, who has that fear, what the fear is, just for your own understanding, but also my understanding. Same with yourself, Heidi. Where you say our energy has been off, I just invite you to get a little bit clearer with that. What does that mean exactly? Grant, welcome. If you do have the ability to participate now live, that's cool. If you just listen in, that's also fine. You go back and catch that first sort of 10, 15 minutes. I've just asked 3 questions. You're welcome to write them down in the chat box or in your notepad. It's the 3 questions are, why are you here? What brought you here to this program? What's the current situation with your child? There's actually 4 questions. How do you want the situation to be instead? And what's getting in the way of that? So I'll say that again. What brought you here? What's the current situation with your child or children? What's your ideal situation with your children? And what do you feel is getting in the way of that? We're just up to that last question now. Okay, so we've established that what brought you here. We've established the current situation for your children or your child, the ideal situation, what's currently getting in the way of that. And so Heidi just elaborated, work is dominating my attention at the moment. No dad playtime with his torn calf muscle. These are elevating Jack's resistance. Yeah, great. Cool. And once again, there's no judgment around this. I have no judgment at all. And there needs to be no judgment from you uh, about whether this is right or wrong, good or bad, or we need to get down on each other or ourselves about the situation. We may feel some type of pain if we felt like maybe we're letting our child down or we could be doing better. That's all natural. There's just no judgment around any of this stuff. We're just telling ourselves the truth so then we can free it up space for what's next. Okay, so we've established those important questions. We've told ourselves the truth. You've told yourself the truth about what's going on and just acknowledged it. I'm just going to run through the process that we'll be on over through the next six weeks, 6 sessions. And this process is based on what I've found useful in my own parenting, as well as my observation with families and having worked with, at this point, thousands and thousands of youth. And the process is first and foremost understanding that, and the title of this program currently at this time is Parenting with Presence. And the first step in this 3-step process, you may want to write this down, either if you're following along in the chat or just on a piece of paper if you're taking notes. This process I found is bulletproof in helping us and you to be able to change the situation and get the ideal situation that you just mentioned with your children. So there's 3 steps. The first step is your ability to be present. And I called this, might say, being calm, holding your nervous system, um, being composed, staying regulated. These are all terms that I'm putting on. Step number 1 is being able to hold yourself. Now, being able to hold yourself means that these situations are not a problem for you, meaning even when your child is resisting you, that you stay composed, meaning that even if there's clashing going on, essentially the first step in the process of helping your child through their own emotions and through their own situations in sport is your ability to be chill, to be composed, to be essentially unfazed, unrocked by what's happening. So often, I've been here so many times myself, is I start to see one of my children getting really anxious, or they're getting really nervous in the social situation. They're not at this level yet where they're teenagers, so they're still young. But we all as parents know this, when we start to see our child is starting to feel uncomfortable or in a situation, and I know the experience of, oh, then I start to get worried. I start to get worried that they might have an emotional episode, or and my children used to do jiu-jitsu. I remember one particular moment when my youngest Ruben was really heightened, and he's full of energy. Me and my eldest son are quite chill people naturally, and my youngest is like wild, and wild in a good way, but also can take it too far at times. And at this point, we came from school. He was already kind of wacky from school, and he's coming into the jiu-jitsu class. And if you know anything about martial arts or jiu-jitsu, it's a respectful environment. You put your gi on, your kimono, and you're there to, you bow, you come in, you got to take your shoes off with the mat. It's a respectful environment. And on this day, in other days, but on this day in particular, he was really not really there. I think we all know where our kids are, like, just kind of heightened, right? And then kind of not really listening. And he's 5 at this age, right? He's already 2 years younger for this class. And so what I noticed is I started to feel, oh, he's going to disrupt this class. And I started to feel that, of this, I'm starting to get worried about he's going to mess up the class, and he's going to put everyone else off, and I'm going to feel embarrassed, and there's other parents watching the class. And I don't typically get embarrassed, but I was just feeling a bit, I don't want him to, kind of ruin the experience for everyone else. And I felt bad for him because he was kind of really heightened. And so in that moment, I started to recognize that, hey, I'm starting to put a lot of projections on my child here. And what he really needs from me is me to just help him regulate and calm down, which we'll get into later. The point that I'm making is the first step in this process of being present with your children and helping have these situations that you want is to be able to control your own emotions. It's be able to regulate yourself so that we respond instead of react, so that we become the calm seas in their rocky ocean. Because the situations that are currently going on for your child, almost all, if not all of them, will be they have heightened emotions. They're not still oceans right now. They're getting worried, they're getting anxious, they have a lot of fear, they're angry, they're frustrated, whatever it is, their emotional state is heightened. So the first part in this process, and we'll get into the steps and the process and the tools for this later on, but I just want you to understand the first step in this process is you to be able to be the calm ocean for their rocky ship. Once again, we're going to be working on this throughout the course. At the moment, I'm just giving you the first step, the understanding, the conceptual understanding of this process. Step 1, be able to hold yourself, right? And sure, we all get we all get angry at times, we all get frustrated at times, we all get embarrassed, we get tired, all of those things. But the more you as a parent are able to stay steady when your child is not, the better for them. Because, and we'll get into this later on in the next part of the session, but presence is the thing that helps them start to naturally regulate. And the more that you're composed and the more that you're centered, they'll naturally start to, their nervous system will naturally start to sync up to yours. And we'll also talk about ways to support that through communication and other things. I just want you to let me know in the chat box, does that make sense? Does that first step make sense about why that is the first step? And does the step itself make sense in being able to stay centered yourself? I call it hold yourself. Does it make sense? Okay, cool. That's the first part of the process that we'll be going for. The second part of the process is what I call listening. Now, listening means both to other people, your children, but also yourself. If you get dysregulated and if you're not able to hold yourself and you get dysregulated and heightened and you get overly emotional, it's impossible for you to identify the best way to support your children if you're not composed yourself. I'll say that again. If you're not composed yourself, if you're emotional, it's impossible for you to intuitively know how to support your children because your nervous system is too heightened. When you're in step one, when you're naturally holding yourself and you're regulated, you'll intuitively know what to say, what to do, and what not to say and do. But the more that you get in your head and we get worried as parents and we overthink things, then we're like kind of like throwing all these things out, nothing's really working. That's when the clashing starts to happen, is when both people are a bit too in their head or a bit too emotional, and but happens. And we've all been there, and I've certainly had myself. So the second part that we're going to be practicing in this process is your ability to listen, your ability to listen to yourself, what you're feeling, what you're needing, your ability to listen to your intuition of what's the best approach in this situation, not a reaction, not an impulse. The reaction, the impulses that you currently are going through and having are the thing that's causing the problem, or at least contributing to the problem escalating. It may not be necessarily the problem for your child, but it's escalating the situation that may not be ideal between the two of you. Right. So we need to, first of all, learn how to hold ourselves. Second of all, listen to what's going on for them, what they're saying and what they're not saying, what we're feeling, and what our intuition is telling us to how to respond in that situation instead of react. So that'll be the second part of the process. The third part of the process will be communication. And the first part of the process is all about the energy, about you being in a good energy yourself. And then we start to get in, okay, then how do I communicate with that? There are certain um, words there are certain ways of communicating that are more conducive to helping our children than not, right? And so we're going to be looking at language and we're going to be looking at communication because words are spells. That's why they call it spelling, right? Words have particularly the energy, but words can be influential. And that's why they call it spelling. Abracadabra, side note, abracadabra is actually an Aramaic word that means with my words I create, right? So the ancient people understood the power of words. So the third part is going to be how you can communicate with your children, communication techniques. Cool. So does that all make sense? Just put in the chat box. We'll obviously get into the tools and the steps after that. I'm just giving you the process at the moment so that you understand the way that this is going to work. Just let me know in the chat if that makes sense. And are there any questions at this point? I've been talking almost nonstop for 28 minutes. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to put in the chat box? Once again, we will have open question time at the end to work on your specific situation if you want to. I just, at the moment, with anything that I've said thus far, is there any questions? Nope. Cool. All right. So what we're going to do now, before we get into the first topic, which is presence, is we're going to do a quick visualization process to help you imagine and see and connect to the images and feelings that you want in your relationship with your child. Said with less words, in a moment, we're going to get into a visualization practice to help you connect to, maybe it's just about the same amount of words, connect to how you want to see your children. So often, once again, we're in the situation that's currently going on that we can't imagine a different situation. And using our imagination is a great way to begin to see how we want things to be instead. And if we start to see it in our mind, we begin to see it in the outside world. Fun fact, everything that you see, my phone's blown up with messages, everything that you see once started from someone's imagination. The iPhone was in Steve Jobs' imagination. This book that I'm currently going through with my kids, someone imagined this book and they imagined the title and they imagined what would be in it. This table, this laptop, this pencil, everything in our world started in someone's mind, right? So the ideal situation that you want for your children and for your family, first of all, has to be imagined. You have to see it in your mind and think about it before it can ever actually be lived out, right? So what we're going to do in a moment, I'll explain and then I'll take you through. It'll just be quick. I'm just going to get you to, in a moment, close your eyes, and I'm going to guide you through a process of seeing your child or your children in the ideal way and seeing the situations, certain situations happening in the ideal way. And once again, the importance of this is because you have to first see it in your imagination and your mind before you can actually live it out. Okay, just let me know in the chat box if you guys are open to doing that. There's a lot of talking, but you'll essentially have your own experience. Is everyone up to just doing that for a couple of minutes? Just imagining that situation. Okay, cool. All right. So in your own space, in your own time, just go ahead and close your eyes and get comfortable in your chair. If you're driving or you're watching the replay of this, obviously you can just come back to this situation or do it as homework. But this is part of the creation process. Any creation that happens, first of all, has to exist in our imagination. So just go ahead and close your eyes. And we can always begin by just taking a few deep breaths. Just helps to calm our mind, your mind, and your body. Taking a few deep breaths. Nice and relaxed, but focused state of mind. Breathe in deeply. Now, the first thing I want you to direct your mind to is I want you to find a memory that comes to mind where you had a great time with your child or your children. Just the first one that pops in. Could be a birthday or just a particular memory that comes to mind. I just want you to see that scene playing out in your mind. Notice how that feels. Notice the faces, the face of your child or your children, what was happening. Notice the feelings. Then I want you to find a time in your memory where your child really impressed you in some way. Maybe you were pleasantly surprised by their maturity or their intellect or their sporting skills. Just a moment where you really realized that you felt proud of them. You felt a sense of pride or gratitude. Just notice that feeling. Notice what was going on. Just notice how that felt to be pleasantly surprised, impressed, or proud. And now I want you to turn your attention to the future and just imagine, just see in your mind how you want your child to be. See them in their best. Really just allow yourself to dream. You might be on holidays, you might be in a new house. Just see your children the way you wish they were more often, because that is who they really are at their core. See them happy, playing around, being their best version of themselves. Not anything different to who they are, but just them in their fullness, them at their best. You might see them playing a certain sport or happy, confident. Just notice how that feels. Seeing them at their best, in their fullness. And then just have a moment to interact with that version of them. Just notice how you would talk to them or see yourself talking to them or engaging. Maybe you feel really friendly or things are happy and light. Maybe once again you feel proud. Maybe you're just admiring them. You might see them interacting with their friends, teachers, coaches. See them interacting with other people when they're at their best. And just notice how that feels. Seeing them in their highest, seeing them in their best, their fullness. And just notice how that feels to you. Notice how it feels when you see them in their best, how you feel more relaxed. It's like your job's done, that everything's going to be okay. Maybe there's a sense of gratitude there. Just take a moment to enjoy those pleasant feelings of seeing your kids, your children at their best, noticing how they are at their best, how that feels for you, how it is to observe that. Just notice those positive feelings, any positive feelings. If you struggled with visualizing it, that's totally okay as well. There's no right or wrong way, it's just an experience. In a moment, I'm just going to start to bring those images to a close, and you can start to sort of wiggle your hands and feet or toes, slowly start to move your body or bring yourself back. Take your time. You might have got deep in the visualization, maybe not. But then whenever you're ready, I just want you to write in the chat box or in your piece of paper, pen and paper there. What did you see? What did you see? And was there anything that surprised you with what you saw or what came to mind, what you remembered or what you felt? Just writing down either in the chat or in your with pen and paper there what you saw and maybe any particular things that stood out to you. And I'd love to hear them if people want to put it in the chat. another few moments to just write down your experience there, what you saw, maybe anything that stood out. If nothing really stood out, that's fine too. I've had experiences that have been quite mild with visualization. I've also had incredibly profound experiences that have changed my life dramatically, and that's happened many, many times. As I said, this is a great way to step outside the jar so you can see the vision that you want for your family or for yourself or for your child or for your relationship with your child. And as I said again, everything is always comes from our imagination. Everything that's in this material world was first of all imagined by someone, which is cool because if you can see it, you can do it. Really nice. If you can't see it, it's pretty hard for you to do it because you can't even comprehend it. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone's done that. And how was that experience? Just put maybe if you can put in the chat, how was that experience for you? It's like good. I learned something. Um, couldn't see anything. Was terrible. Was good. Got some stuff out of it. The intention or the purpose there is for you guys, parents, just to see what you want the ideal situation to be. It gives me feedback if we're as we're moving along here as well. Cool. Rachel said that was good. Helped me to see more positive. Yeah. Yeah, like our mind, for most people, um, naturally and habitually will go towards more of negative things. I think it seems to be somewhat hardwired in most of us that we typically go more negative. Our mind goes more negative and can focus more on the negative and see more of the negative stuff. But the more that we practice consciously connecting to the ideal, the positive, the better we get at it, and the more we start to see more positive. And maybe we've trained areas where we see positive in certain areas and negative in other areas. Um, in my experience, it's good to be positive in all areas, almost all the time, if not all the time. Heidi says, great. Rob had a lot of future in later life. I was more present. They all revolved around family. Only amazing experiences. Yeah. And it just feels good to do it. Okay, great. All right. So that is essentially your North Star. So I encourage you throughout this program and beyond this program, keep coming back to, and we'll keep coming back to how you want your relationship with your child to be. And really let go of anything else that comes into your mind. There will be old stories in your mind that'll be, oh, it needs to be hard, or like we've kind of been taught a lot that life has to be hard. We need to, and we get stuck in sort of making them things harder than they need to be. But really, if you hold your vision of what you want your relationship with your child to be, hold the vision of how you best see them and how they are at their best, and you just keep seeing them in that way, and you have a commitment to making these situations be the way that you want them to be, then they are going to start becoming that way. I'll say that again. You've had situations that you haven't really liked with your children, and we get to let go of that situation and stop seeing it in that way and see it in the new way. And the more that you see it in the new way and you keep holding the vision of them, how you like them to be, how you want them to be, how their best are, and how you want to show up with them and how you want to move through these situations, the more that you see it that way, in this positive, easy, happy way, the way that you want it to be, the more that it'll actually be that way. It'll start to just naturally be that way because that's how you see it. And if you see it that way, that's how it'll just naturally start to be. Make sense? Cool. So we can now let go of that old way of seeing things and even old way of seeing your children and start to see it in a new way. Okay. So that's the North Star. We spoke about step one. And now we're going to move into step one, and we'll continue step one into next session. This is just the introduction to step one. The title of this program is Parenting with Presence. And as I said, presence is the start of this. Presence is the way that I'm describing presence is the ability to be totally in the moment. Now, I work with some of the kids, your children that are in this program, and one of the main things that I teach them and give them tools around is how to be in the moment. Because most problems exist in our mind and they exist in past or future. But really, when we're in the present moment, there really is no problems. Almost all of them are developed from the mind about what we think might happen in the future or what we remembered happened in the past. And as a parent, the greatest gift that you can give to your children is your ability to be really present with them. Totally non-judgmentally, unconditionally loved presence, where you're really seeing them, you're really hearing them, you're really feeling them. That's where every child and every person feels most seen and safe, is when someone is really present with them. We're not thinking about what we need to do after this conversation or later on. It's really being totally in the moment. And when your child is going through some emotional experience with their sport or school, whatever it may be, as I said to you first, the first part of this is being able to hold yourself. Key part of that is being really present, being really, really like fully present with them. Because in itself, even before you have to say anything or do anything, most children just want to be seen and heard. They don't necessarily, oftentimes even as they get older, they don't typically want advice. You may have experienced this. They just want you to hear them and listen to them. And they'll, particularly as they get older, younger ones, maybe not so much. But even younger ones, actually, depending on the situation, most of the time, or a lot of the time, they simply just want to be heard and seen and validated. And if we jump in too soon with advice, or we try to fix something, or we can't hold our own emotions and we get frazzled, that helps them, that makes them feel unsafe. If we feel like they see us, we're not present, they feel unsafe, because if mum and dad aren't feeling present or safe, then I can't as well. So your ability to be present will directly correlate to how your children move through their situations. As I said also, then the things that need to be done or need to be said or need to be changed can happen, but they come from a place of presence, not from a place of fear. Presence is the foundation from what I'm teaching here, and the thing that I practice in my own life and what I do work with the youth. The ability to be really in the moment, quiet our mind, lessen the fear. And the more present you are, the less fear goes down. When fear goes down, the presence come up. When presence come up, fears goes down. And they oftentimes will come up with their own answers. They'll be able to solve their own problems. Or that's when they feel that you're present with them, that you're not necessarily trying to change them, that you just love them unconditionally, even when they're emotional, even when everything's crazy. You're just there, and you're just totally with loving eyes and loving open heart with them. They'll feel safe. They'll start to regulate themselves. They might come up with their own solutions, or now they'll be more inclined to listen to you because they actually feel that you aren't judging them and you don't need to change them. It's sort of this paradox where if they don't feel like you're trying to fix them or change them, that you totally accept how they are and who they are and everything about them, then they're actually more likely to come up with their own solutions or be open to feedback or insight or guidance. But presence really is the foundation here. And by presence, once again, what I mean is the ability for you to be totally in the moment with them as they're talking to you, as they're having this experience, as As you're having your own experience, you got to be present with your own experience of, oh, I'm getting angry here. Oh, I'm trying to jump in here, or I'm feeling annoyed, or I'm pissed off, or they're not listening to me. And we start to get wrapped up in our own stories. If we just observe that and be present with our own experience, then once again, we can respond differently, and we can compose ourselves to be able to help ourselves first and foremost, and then help our children. Once again, we'll be talking about strategies and tools around this. This is just the first topic. The first topic is the power of being present. It's the power of presence, and presence really can solve 99.9% of problems, being really, really in the moment. Okay. Are there any questions about being present? Does it make sense? What questions do you have? What gets in the way of you being present, maybe? Just helping to understand if that makes sense, and what questions you have around that first part, which is the importance of presence, the power of presence. I'd love to hear any questions in the chat. If you have them, if you don't have any, just give me a thumbs up in the chat, or if I don't see any questions, I'll imagine that there's none. Too often, and look, guys, I'm not perfect with this. I've gotten 1,000 times better. But too often when these situations happen with our children, what actually happens is we get triggered and like, here it is again. And then this story cards, see, they never listened to me, or see, he never wants to try anything new, or see, he's like, these are just old stories. They are not the actual total present situation, right? We bring our old stuff into this current situation, which is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the opposite of that, where we bring our old stuff, and we can bring stuff from our own childhood and how we were parented, and how this situation's happened so many times before. Those stories may be true, but they're not helpful. What your child actually needs is not bringing our baggage into this present moment. It's just totally being in the moment with them and listening to them right now, seeing them right now, and seeing them like you've never seen them before, seeing them like for the first time, where it's just really listening to them and understanding, and open up your heart, and being fully present with them, and being fully present with yourself as well. Any questions? Any questions? And then we're gonna get into the first bit of homework, which is pretty simple, nothing big. And we all might be traumatized from school about what homework means. Doesn't have to mean that. Any questions? No, we're good. Okay. So homework for this week. Okay, homework for this week. What I would like you to do is, every time a situation comes up with your child where you previously wouldn't have been so good, or it clashed, or where there's been emotion previously, the stuff that I'm talking about, the reason why you're here, when those situations arise, what I want you to do is just take a few breaths and have a phrase or a term that you use, or that you both use, to stay connected to your North Star. So, for example, if you wrote down, back to the question around how do you want it to be, and you want, let's see if I can get an example. For example, it could be, when it starts to get emotional, you breathe and you say, I'm going to be present. Or you breathe and you say, I'm going to be relaxed, or I'm going to listen. Or you breathe and you say, it's the new way. Something that's going to help you connect to the vision that you've just seen and you've written about with your child. Does that make sense? What you're doing is you're breaking the old pattern, the old way of doing things, and you're becoming more present into the current situations to change it. So in those situations that previously may have been emotional with your children, what you're going to do is you're just going to choose presence in that situation. You're gonna breathe. You might mentally or say this out loud or in your head. You might say, now's the time. You might say, be present. You might say, I'm just going to listen. You might say whatever to yourself. As a reminder to step into the new way that you've committed to. There was a questionnaire at the start of this program where you filled out and everyone said 10 out of 10, right? You've made the commitment to doing things a bit differently and changing up to have the new situation. This is what we're doing. This is the first part of this. This is the first practical step, is to, in those moments, choose to breathe and choose a different way of responding. Does that make sense to everyone? And a phrase is really helpful. A phrase in your mind that you can come back to. Sometimes we get emotional and we will just go react. But if you just breathe, first of all, that's going to be a pattern interrupt, because I guarantee every other time that this situation, this undesirable situation, this happened, I guarantee there has been zero or very little conscious breathing. It's probably just been a reaction back and forth. So the conscious breathing in itself will break the pattern in your nervous system or their nervous system to want to go back into the old way. So breathing just settles, which is the first step of being calm. A phrase can be really helpful. And then just respond however you respond. We're going to get into later about communication, all that. We're not there yet. This is just the start. Okay. Are there any questions in the chat about that activity? In a moment, if there is none, I'm going to bring in this recording to an end, and then I'm going to open it up for Q&A where we can unmic each other. Or you guys can talk. We're good. All right. So that's session one. We looked at the North Star. We spoke about the power of presence. We asked the questions about current situation, why you're here, what brought you here, the current situation. We looked at the desired situation. Why is it not happening? We did some visualization to connect to the ideal situation. You've written down what your North Star is. You've written down how you want the relationship to be and how you want those situations to be. We spoke about the power of presence and how being fully in the moment gets out of bringing all old baggage in from anything else and just being fully present with ourselves and yourself and your child and your children. And we gave the practice of when these situations happen, we take a few deep breaths. We can have a phrase that reminds us we're choosing something new, and then we just proceed in a loving way. And then in the next session, we're going to be looking at understanding ourselves better, understanding your children better, and then later on, we're talking about communication, well, stuff like that. But that's it for session one. I'm going to pause this recording, and then I'll open it up to some Q&A.